Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome you all to today's webinar on mental health and well-being in times of global crisis. I see we have right now 22 participants, but with time, maybe in 5 minutes or so, we'll be getting more and more participants joining us. So, with your permission, Pallavi, we can start.
Yes, yes.
Good morning again, once again, everyone, and hope you are all safe and sound. The coronavirus outbreak has actually sparked a major global mental health crisis. Yesterday in news, we heard the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres saying that after decades of neglect, I'm just quoting him, after decades of neglect and underinvestment in mental health services, the COVID 19 pandemic is now hitting families and communities with additional mental stress. Now, maybe this pandemic will be over and will be will be taken control in time in a future near future, but stress, anxiety and depression will continue to affect people and communities. Not only the deaths, that the numbers that we see crossing more than 300,000, there are people who are have gone through the psychological effect of losing their livelihood or having the risk of losing their livelihood in times to come. Many of the people are uh, separated from the loved ones and have suffered from the drastic lockdown orders. And I'll request Pallavi also to share her experience from United States, the lockdown orders and the effect on the human psychology out there. A study conducted by Ethiopia shows that uh, 33% of the people are suffering from depression like symptoms. And there is another study in which in Iran it shows 60% of the people are having mental stress. The number there in US is 45%. A Canadian survey shows that half of the healthcare workers actually need psychological support. The story here in India is not really different. It is natural for many people to feel trapped in thoughts of fear, anxiety, and helplessness, adversely affecting their mental health and well being. And also, add to it the lack of access to their usual support system and the coping strategies that can make the situation much worse. But the good news is that even in these trying times, we can learn to maintain positive mental health and achieve personal growth. While the present crisis is certainly painful and difficult, it doesn't control the outcome of your life. There are many aspects of your life that you can control, modify, and grow with. And that is what we'll be focusing on today's webinar. My name is Manas, and I'll be the moderator in today's webinar. I, along with my team across India and abroad, our speaker today here is actually from United States. She will be joining us there. From all the Value Endow team, we extend our warm welcome to all the participants. Somebody from Srinagar, Sana is there from Srinagar, Pragya is joining us from Nagpur, Dimpy is from Guwahati. So all our teams, Dr. Anjana is there from Delhi. So our teams are spread across India, and also the participants. I see some of the participants joining from Kuwait, from Egypt, and of course from India as well. Let me introduce myself and share a little bit about our firm, Value Endow Consulting. I have 30 years of industry experience, and my experience is across strategy, change management, business development, marketing. I worked with GAIL India, India's Maharatna company, also Kuwait Petroleum Corporation, one of the largest oil company in the world. By education, I am a chemical engineer from IIT Kanpur and MBA from IIFT Delhi. I'm passionate about strategy and change management. I take every opportunity to learn. I teach MBA students, consult corporate houses and businesses, and love to guide people to happiness. Uh, Let me introduce our firm, Value and Dow Consulting. Our firm, Value and Dow Consulting, is inspired by the concept of helping others and looking at organizations as living beings. We know what difficult times, overcome environmental challenges, aspire to grow and excel. These are the basic tenets around which Value and Dow is committed to be your company. We always keep culture, context, and values in mind. And the core principle of Value and Dow is to improve system performance and increase value. We provide integrated, practical, unique, and best fit customer solutions. Our experts are from variety of backgrounds, but everyone shares the common set of values and principles, the same code of conduct. Our mission is to be with you in partnering change with people, process, systems, and strategy. Our range of services include management consulting. This includes systems audit, also include leadership development and workplace well-being. Specifically around workplace well-being, and that is where we are focusing on the mental health part. To know more about our services and utilize our services, you can visit our website valueanddow.com. We have a number of webinars. We have done a couple of them. One was on ego awareness and balance, which was done on 29th of April by Dr. Anjana Sen. Uh, it was very good. We did one with one hospital. The name was Jina Isi Ka Naam Hai, for the doctors, the superheroes in white. This was conducted by Dr. Pragya Mathur Kumar and was done very well appreciated by the people who attended. And today here we are with Pallavi Srivastav on the topic mental health and well-being in times of global crisis. The upcoming webinars are also there. Dr. Dimpy Mahanta will be delivering her topic on human values during the COVID era. Piyush Mahajan will be taking us through some of the webinars on work from home etiquettes, managing virtual teams. I'll also be there in some of the topics like scenario planning, personal mastery, and leading organizational change. So these are the webinars that we have. I'm very excited to be hosting this session today. I'm pleased to introduce our speaker, Pallavi, who is a knowledge partner with us, who is joining us from Boston, USA today. And it's quite late there, 1:30 in the night. So Pallavi is actually having coffee to keep her awake. Uh, Pallavi Srivastav is a very renowned therapist and a well-being consultant. She has a deep fascination with the human mind and its limitless potential, and has conducted numerous workshops on mental health, well-being, and mindfulness. Pallavi says, and it is so very exciting, she says that her mission is to help people to find authentic happiness, success, and inner peace, enabling them to flourish in life. Some of the key issues that she has helped people resolve include the fears, phobia, anxiety, insomnia, depression, OCD, relationship, marital problems, stress, career growth and achievements, and many other. We are happy and enthused to have Pallavi with us today as a speaker. A little disclaimer on this is that this webinar is to share information on well-being practices that can create self-awareness and personal growth. In no way this is a replacement of the one-to-one therapy. If you feel you are under any kind of duress, please seek immediate professional help. Uh, Now, before I invite our speaker Pallavi, I have a bit of housekeeping items to cover about this session today and the Value and Dow webinar platform. We added some offers about our counseling services, which you can avail. We'll talk about these offers at the end of the webinar session today. And the session will be for 1.5 hours. And would love to hear from you during this presentation today. If you have any question for our speaker, please feel free to type in the chat box on the right side of your player. We'll be saving some 15 minutes at the end of the presentation for Q&A session. If we don't get to your question during today's webinar, rest assured we'll surely come back to you by mail and we'll respond to your queries. We'll also have some poll questions put up to you as we move forward. These poll questions will appear just above your chat box. And last, we would like to encourage you participate in our future webinars and share within your social networks on Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn. So without any further ado, and I'll request Pallavi to start her presentation. Pallavi, over to you.
Thank you, Manas. Thank you. Can we start? Yes. So thank you, Manas, for having me here today. And I would welcome all the participants who have joined us today on this webinar on mental health and well-being in times of a global crisis. And I would like to begin with a wonderful quote that I came across on the internet, which I think is very, very appropriate in these present times. So this German gentleman, Dieter F. Uchtdorf, he says, "It's your response to adversity and not adversity itself that determines how your life story will develop." And how appropriate it is in the present times. If you see right now, the adversity has impacted the entire world. People everywhere are affected by it, right? Manas, what do you think about that, right?
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
Exactly. And some people may be more affected by it than others, but everyone is affected in some way or the other. And like, Manas also shared, that includes me. My home is in New Delhi, India, but I am in Boston, USA now for the last few months, waiting to get back home. And I have no clue when I'll be able to get back to home. So, that's the way in which this situation has affected me. But here I am talking to you wonderful people at 1:30 a.m. in Boston. And I'm looking forward to this. I'm happy that I'm able to be of service to you in these difficult times. So without any further delay, I would like to now quickly take you through what we are going to discuss today in this webinar. So we will begin with understanding what is mental health and well-being. We'll talk about ways in which COVID-19 is impacting mental health and well-being. We'll also talk about how you can foster mental strength and personal growth during these times of crisis. We'll share tools and exercises that you can practice every day to implement this. And lastly, we'll discuss the way forward. What are the next steps on this journey of well-being and personal growth for you that you can take? So let us start here, Manas, with the poll question 1.
Yeah. So we'll have this poll online, and this poll, the question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, rate the impact of COVID-19 on your mental and emotional state, with 1 being minimal and 10 being severe impact. So request all of you to respond on this particular poll. You'll see the response, how it is coming up. It is on your screen on the right hand side. Please give your option and let's see what the responses are coming up. So we are getting responses, and it is on real-time basis. 30% of the people, almost like 30% of the people, they say that they are rating 5, 7%. So I'll go by the start minimal impact. People say 7% of the people, 7% they say, 18% now they say 2, and that is how it is moving. But most of it is coming below 7 or below 7. So
Right.
severe impact, nobody says that there is a very severe impact. That is the whole idea that is coming up. We are seeing on screen.
Yeah. And what I'm also seeing is that most of the people are responding that they are affected somewhere between 5 to 7, which is significant. 20, there are 20% people who are saying at least at 5, then there are 20% who are saying 7, and another 20%. So that makes about 60% of people who are falling between 5 to 7, which is moderate to a high level of impact on their mental and emotional state. So thank you for responding to us on that. We'll talk more about this over the next few slides. But first, let's understand what is mental health and well-being. Often we think that mental health is just the absence of mental disorders, which is not correct. Just like your physical health is not just the absence of extreme terminal diseases. Your physical health will include a lot of other factors like your blood work, your stamina, your strength, your immunity, your body composition, your bone density, and all those things will together, reflect the state of your physical health. Similarly, mental health includes many factors. And to put it simply, we can say that mental health is a state of our emotional, psychological, and social well being. It affects how we think, how we feel, and act. It determines how we handle challenges, failures, and stress, and it affects our relationships, our career, and choices. So, if you look at mental health, it is a lot like physical health. If we are physically not healthy, we cannot do well in different aspects of our lives. And same is true for our mental health. It affects all aspects of our lives. And that is why mental health is important in all phases of our lives too. More so during a global crisis like the one that we are facing right now. And that brings me to our next question, the poll question. Manas, would you like to take that? Manas, could you hear me? Yeah.
So we'll go to the next question. Yeah, we'll go to the next question, which is about pick one factor which has caused you most stress during the COVID-19 situation. So the poll question, situation. So the question is there. You can respond on the questions.
Yes, and I would
vote. Yeah, please.
Yeah, I would just quickly read the options for you. Fear of the virus and safety of loved ones, fear of the unknown, uncertainty about future, loss of normalcy, feeling lonely and disconnected, strained relationships, financial worries. And maybe some of you or many of you may feel that you are affected by more than one of these factors, and that's totally okay. Just pick one of those factors which has affected you the most. So we are getting some responses, Manas. We are seeing.
Yes. Yeah. The response is something like this, that 60% of the people have said that uncertainty about future is the biggest factor, is the biggest factor. Also, the fear of the virus and safety of loved ones. That is 25%. 25 to 27% people say so. Financial worries, 6%. Feeling lonely and disconnected, 6%. And fear of unknown is 3%. Loss of normalcy, 6%.
Correct. So what we're seeing is that the people who have joined us, at least among these, uncertainty about the future and fear of the virus and safety of loved ones is causing them the most stress. So right now it says about 76% of the people are saying that they are affected by these two. And that's very, very interesting. And that there itself shows that the crisis that we face is not just physical, but cognitive and emotional too. And today itself, the UN, United Nations, has come up with its brief on COVID-19 at the need for action and mental health in this regards. And the UN mentioned in its brief that although the COVID-19 crisis in the first instance is a physical health crisis, it has the seeds of a major mental health crisis as well if action is not taken. The brief goes on to mention that the mental health and well-being of whole societies have been severely impacted by this crisis and are a priority to be addressed urgently in these times. And it is, reflected if we just quickly go back and look at these factors that we talked about in the poll question too: the fear of the virus, the fear of the unknown, the uncertainty, normal loss of normalcy, feeling lonely and disconnected. All these factors are affecting us at mental and emotional level too, and they may be leading us to feel some difficult emotions like anxiousness, helplessness, fear, stress, anger, sadness, confusion, frustration, and so on. And if you are experiencing any of this, I want you to remember that it is natural to feel this way. Life is disrupted at this moment, and this crisis is certainly painful and difficult. But I also want you to remember it doesn't control the outcome of your life. Even in these difficult times, there are many aspects of your life that you can control, modify, and grow with. And how can you do that? How can you foster mental strength, well-being, and personal growth during a crisis? That's exactly what we are going to discuss now over the next few slides. So we will talk about a few approaches and practices. We'll talk about reaction versus response. We'll talk about being mindful. We'll talk about acceptance, resilience, count your blessings, and physical well-being. And I want to draw your attention to why we are calling them approaches and practices, because while they are concepts, ideas, or tools, at the same time they will work, they'll help you only if you practice it in your day-to-day life. And one thing very interesting again about all these approaches is that they feed into each other. So let's say if you're working on being more mindful, if you just pick up being mindful and you work and put effort to be more mindful in these times, it will feed into the other aspects. Like it will help you to respond more than react. It will help you to be more in acceptance. It will increase your resilience. It will make you more grateful. So that's the good part. Even if you work on one of these, it will help you do better in all the other aspects too. So let's start now with reaction versus response. Now, what is reaction? When any unpleasant situation happens or when a crisis hits, a reaction is what is instant, what is driven by beliefs, biases, and prejudices from our subconscious mind. It is based in the moment. It lacks consideration of the long-term effects of what you do or say, and it is emotion-driven and focused on survival. The response, in contrast, usually it comes slowly, it's thought of, and it is based on information from conscious as well as the subconscious mind. It weighs the long-term effects of what you're saying, what you're doing, and it stays in line with your core values. So to sum up, a reaction is more like an autopilot mode. A crisis hits or a difficult experience comes and you just get into autopilot mode and you're reacting. In contrast, response is like you take a pause, you reflect how you want to respond to it, how you want to act, and then you take a conscious and informed decision to do that. And to understand this, we can look at a very simple example. Let's say you bought a new car, and let's say it's a dream car that you've been waiting to buy for some time now. You bought this car, you've had it only for 2 weeks, and you're driving, and you're following the rules. And there is another car, and you can see from in your back mirror that the person is flouting all the rules. And then suddenly, from nowhere, they come and they hit you. Now you get very, very angry and you're upset and you stop them, and let's say they stop. You get out of your car, you look at the dent in the car and you get very, very angry. You walk to the person, you scream at them, you yell at them, and in the best case scenario, let's say they agree to pay for whatever damage they have done, and they exchange numbers with you and they go. You get back in your car, you're driving back home, but you're angry and you're just fuming with what has happened. That could be an example of a reaction. Now let's look at a scenario 2 in the same thing. Let's say you are driving the same car just 2 weeks, the same person who's not following traffic rules, you can see that they hit your car, you stop them, you get out of the car, you look at the dent, and you are angry. But you're aware that you're getting angry. And in that moment, you start walking to that other person's car. And as you're walking to the person's car, you're letting yourself process what has happened. You're allowing yourself to just feel what has happened. You're letting it sink in what has happened. And by the time you reach the car, now you can talk to that person in 2 ways probably. You can either still be angry at them and tell them what they have done is wrong and they need to pay for it. You can do that angrily, or you can tell them calmly. And it doesn't matter how you do. You can, even if you're doing that angrily, but because of that process of walking from your car to that car, you have reflected over what has happened and you're aware that you're feeling angry, that can be categorized as response. And this is an example of a reaction versus response, where to an outside person it may look same, yet it will feel very different to you. And that is one very important differentiation between a reaction as well as a response. To put it in short,
Pallavi, we received one question from Rashmi Sharma.
Yes,
She is asking that how to practice response over reacting.
Yes. So we are going to talk more about this as we talk about being mindful, as we talk about being more resilient and acceptance. All those things will feed into being more responsive, and this will immediately connect very strongly with mindfulness, which is what we are going to talk about over the next few slides. But before that, I would ask all of you to right now in this moment take a step back and reflect and tell me, how would you categorize your behavior in context of COVID-19 situation? Would you categorize it as reaction or response? So this is poll question 3. Manas, can you, if you can just help them?
Yeah. I put that on, and respondents are filling up their poll answers. We are getting responses. So it is divided between reaction and response, but mostly now it is have like 40 participants. Okay. So initially we saw some, it is divided between reaction and response, but right now we see more towards response. Like 32% people say that it is about reaction, and 68% is about response.
Correct. And that's amazing. That means that I have a very, very interesting set of audience, and it is expected also, because here we have these set of people who have chosen to join this webinar. So there is a step that they're taking towards response. So that's very, very, interesting. And also what would have happened, at least I will share my example, is that it's not 100% reaction or 100% response. It's always on a spectrum. So it's like there are times when I am reacting and then I catch myself and then I move towards response. And just by responding to this question and reflecting back, for those who have actually answered reaction, I want to especially tell you that just by reflecting back right now and answering that, oh, your behavior has been more on the reaction side, you've already taken a step back. You have already moved closer towards responding. And that's the step 1. And I hope that I've been able to answer to some extent what Rashmi was asking. And we will, as we talk about mindfulness and the other steps, it will help all of you understand how you can respond more and, cut down on the amount of reaction that you give. So let's move to the next poll question.
Yeah. So we'll put the next poll question on, which is, which of the following do you associate with being mindful?
Yeah. The options are meditation, awareness of my thoughts, feelings, body sensations, and surroundings, non judgment and kindness, being in the present, all of the above.
So we are getting responses, and it's like 44% people say that it is about awareness of my thoughts, feelings, body sensations, and surroundings.
Mhm.
Few they have talked about non-judgment and kindness. 9% being in the present, and the majority of people, 50%, they say all of them.
Correct, correct. And yes,
Meditation also we see some response, 3%.
yes. So in a way, all of these actually comprise what being mindful is. And one very important factor that I want to bring to everybody's attention is that a lot of times people associate mindfulness with meditation it only. However, the mindful meditation is just one of the many ways to get to a state where you be mindful in your day-to-day life. So the end goal is being mindful in your everyday interactions, and there can be different ways to get to that, to be able to do that. So let's take a look about what the Greater Good Science Center at Berkeley has to say about mindfulness. They say mindfulness means maintaining a moment by moment awareness of our thoughts, feelings, body sensations, and surrounding environment through a gentle, nurturing lens. And if we just dissect this definition, you will see there are two parts to it. One is the awareness of thoughts, feelings, body sensations, and the environment. And the second, the second part often missed is a gentle, nurturing lens. And without this gentle, nurturing lens, the being mindful, that process, that action of being mindful is not fully complete. And we'll understand this more as we talk about the steps to be mindful. So, how do we actually practice mindfulness in our day to day life? How do we really bring mindfulness in our experiences, in our interactions? So, what I've done is I've broken it down into 3 steps. The first thing is asking yourself question. Asking yourself that what are your thoughts right now? What are your feelings? What are your sensations? And what is the environment? So if we take the current situation of the COVID-19, appropriate questions will be to ask, what do you think about it? What do you think that, um, are people following the social distancing rule? What are your thoughts about it? What do you think about the lockdown? Some governments are enforcing, in India, like it's enforced very strongly. There are other parts of the world where it's not forced as strongly. So you can have different thoughts about these, whatever is going on right now in COVID-19. How are you feeling about it? So that could be the next question. And the answers could be, you could be feeling probably angry or just anxious, worried, maybe even helpless. What are the sensations, body sensations? Maybe you're experiencing because of all this, probably tiredness or some heaviness or tightness. What is the environment around us? If we look at right now, on COVID-19, the environment, people around us, there is an environment of fear, there's an environment of worry, anxiousness, uncertainty, and all that. So that when you ask these questions, you will know these things, and that will be the step 2. That will be the awareness. When you get the answers to those questions, what are your thoughts, what are your feelings, what are your sensations, and what is the environment? The answers to those questions will lead you to step 2, which is awareness. Now that brings us to a very important part or step in this process. What happens once you get those answers? Let's say you ask those questions and now your answers are that. You probably feel, oh, why has this happened? Your thoughts are that, and you feel, oh, you know maybe anxious, you feel lost, you feel helpless, or whatever, on those similar lines. Let's say you feel all that and you're aware that there is an environment of fear and uncertainty around you. How does that make you feel? The one scenario, one response could be that you feel, oh, I should not be feeling this, or this should not be happening, or how can I change this? Or the other aspect could be that it's okay, this is what I'm feeling. And that it's okay is what is this gentle, nurturing lens. That it's okay is what we call acceptance. And acceptance itself has a very important role in psychology and in personal growth and in well-being. But acceptance is also a very important part of practicing being mindful, of practicing mindfulness. Without this gentle, nurturing lens, just that awareness is not, it doesn't complete mindfulness. So mindfulness needs, along with that awareness, it needs this gentle, nurturing lens. It needs acceptance. And acceptance, like I said, has a very important role in psychology, in well-being, in personal growth. And that's why we are going to talk a little bit more about acceptance over the next few slides. And before I move on to acceptance, Manas, I just wanted to ask you if there are any questions so far.
Yeah,
You
we
can,
have
yeah.
we have one question from Gladys Babiera, and the question is how to guide people towards response, especially those young learners who are affected.
Mhm. Okay. So one important way to guide yourself or anybody else towards response is the first step is to know that there is something called reaction and there's something called response. So the first step is understanding the difference between reaction and response. So if you are looking to bring this awareness to young learners, you can share with them what I shared about reaction and response. And the second, that itself is step one. The second is being mindful. That's where mindfulness comes in play. Asking them what's happening as there is a crisis, whether it's COVID-19 or any other crisis or challenging situation in their life. What does it do to them? How is it affecting their thoughts? How is it affecting their feelings? How is it affecting the environment? Let them write that down. Let them get aware about it. And as they get aware about it, they can look at how do they feel about that. And as I talk in the next few slides about acceptance, once you understand that, you can bring in acceptance too, to help people understand between that difference of reaction and response. So let's look at the next slide, which will probably help you understand this even better. When there is a crisis or when there is a challenging situation, there are different reactions again that we can give. So what could be those reactions? And I would call them default in this case. So usual reactions that we have is sometimes we get into denial. So we say, oh, this should not have happened, or we go on denying the whole situation completely and say, oh, nothing is wrong, everything is perfect. Or we get into indifference, I don't care. Even false positivity, where we say, I nothing affects me, I'm always positive and calm. Or we immediately jump to trying to fix it and change it. And in those cases, you might be catching yourself saying to yourself, I should stop feeling like this and be calm. I should change my thoughts and feelings right now. And that means that you're having a reaction towards what you're thinking and feeling. Another default reaction that people have is feeling defeatism or helplessness, like there is no point in doing anything because nothing that I do matters, nothing is in my control. So these are some standard reactions that we may have, but none of these are acceptance. So what is acceptance then? Acceptance I would say, is an internal experience as well as an action. Uh, in all my experience of well-being and personal growth, about my own journey as well as my interactions with my clients, I have noticed acceptance is one concept, one idea which is hard to grasp, but I'm going to still take an attempt at it. Acceptance, from my perspective, is the pause. It is the space to rest and process. It is the space that you take to let things sink in. And how can you practice acceptance? There are steps to that can help you practice acceptance. But I just want to repeat again how I look at acceptance. It is an internal experience that you have. It is the pause that you take, the space to rest and process, to let things sink in before you react, before you give up your response actually, and not react. So let's take a quick look at the steps to practice acceptance. So the first step in practicing acceptance is acknowledge the situation and the facts. So like in the current scenario, what are the facts that we need to acknowledge? We need to acknowledge that right now there is a global health crisis that is going on. Everyone is affected. There is social distancing, so life is changing. Life is not normal. A lot of people are getting affected by it. There is restriction of your movement. There is some changes in the way you can exercise your freedom. So all those are the facts in these given situation. So acknowledging the fact, that's the step one of this acceptance process. What is the step two? Now, as you're aware about all these facts, what are you feeling? What is happening inside you? Name those feelings, feel them. So you might be feeling, like we talked about earlier, so you might be feeling anxious, you might be feeling helpless, you might be feeling lost, you might be feeling confused. Whatever it is, name those feelings, feel it. One very important factor is to give yourself permission to feel. That is another very important lesson that I have learned the hard way on my journey to personal growth, is to allowing yourself, to giving yourself the permission to feel whatever you're feeling. And it may sound counterintuitive. Only when we allow yourself, only when we give ourselves that permission to feel whatever we are feeling, is that we can move to the next step. We can move towards changing things. But first, we need to feel what we are feeling. And I want to share a quote that an ex-Buddhist monk, Nitya Shanti, said in one of his talks that I attended. He said, fully feeling what we are feeling is very healing. And believe me, I found that, just practicing that really, really helps. So that's step two of the process of practicing acceptance. The step three, the next step, is very, very important. It says, do nothing for the moment, let it sink process. This is the space that I was talking about. Giving yourself that space of doing nothing in that moment. And it is important to understand, when I'm saying doing nothing in that moment, it's only for that time. It doesn't mean, oh, you do nothing about the situation or you do nothing about the crisis. That is probably being passive, being helpless, or giving up. But that is not what acceptance is. Here, the step three of doing nothing is, in that moment, when you are acknowledging the facts and you're feeling, allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling, you give yourself some space to let yourself process whatever you're experiencing and letting things sink in. And once you have done that, you will automatically move to the next step, which is assess and respond. In that moment, you can assess and respond that what can be changed and what can't. Once you've gone through the first three process, once you've given yourself that space to know the facts, to feel what you feel, and let everything sink in. Once you've done that, you can move to that next level, which is assessing and responding. And in that phase, you can assess, oh, what cannot be changed in these situations. That what you can't change is the nature of the virus, what it is doing, people falling sick, the social distancing rules. You can't change, like you can't make other people follow those rules. So all those things are not in your control. But what can you change is, again, how you respond. So let's say for example, most of my work has been face-to-face, one-to-one work. But in these situations, I have understood that there are more and more people who need support on their journey of mental health and well-being. And we can't, the rules don't allow us to meet face-to-face. So I have adapted. I have understood what can I change. I can't change the rules, and I can't change the need of the people, but I can change my medium through which I am interacting with people. So that's an example of how I went through that process and how I assessed what can I do. So where it became a response at my end. So if you see, so far, we talked about reaction versus response. We talked about being mindful. We talked about acceptance, and how the last two things that we talked about, being mindful and acceptance, how they feed back into response, how they help you to respond more often than react. And here, so acceptance.
Pallavi, if I can, if I can just put one more
Yes.
question out there, a couple of them. One is, somebody asked, Kanchan asked about the quotation that you talked about, that Buddhist monk. So if you can please repeat.
Yes. So in fact, yeah, I'll repeat it slowly. You should definitely write it down. Nitya Shanti, he's an ex-Buddhist monk and he's a teacher. He says, fully feeling what you are feeling is very healing. I will repeat again.
Fully feeling what you are feeling is really healing.
Fully feeling what you are feeling is very healing. Right.
Great, excellent.
Yes.
There was one more question about, this was from Umakant. He was asking that, how do you get rid of the past bad feelings?
Can you, do you think we can ask him to elaborate a little bit more on the question? What does he mean with past bad feelings?
Okay.
We can spare 5 minutes on this.
Sure. So we'll request Umakant to just type in your if anything specific that you want to talk about. So we'll get to that. Otherwise, we can move.
Yeah, so I will just ask, if you can hear me, Umakant, just if you can elaborate on the question a little bit more in terms of what do you mean by, can you repeat, Manas, what did he say? He said, how to get rid of?
Actually, he's connecting this with mindfulness, but otherwise the question was this, the statement was something like this: in mindfulness, getting rid of past bad feelings is challenging. How to deal with it?
Oh, okay. So that makes sense. I can answer that. Mindfulness is not about getting rid of bad feelings. In fact, if you go back to, let me quickly take you back to that slide. Mindfulness is the awareness of thoughts, feelings, body sensations, and the environment, and just looking at them from a gentle, nurturing lens, or accepting that past bad feeling. When you accept that past bad feeling, it passes. It's very interesting. It feels counterintuitive. It feels, no, how can I accept, or how can I be okay with feeling sad, or how can I be okay with feeling angry? But we are feeling beings. Feelings are a part of us, and we can't stop bad feelings and hope to experience only good feelings. It's a part of our life. We can't do that. So if you see, mindfulness is about knowing what are the thoughts which are leading you to feel that way, and it's okay in that moment to feel that way. Take that moment and allow yourself. It's, again, I will go back to that quote, fully feel that past bad feeling. The more you feel it, the more you give yourself permission to feel it in a conscious way, not getting swayed away by it, but in a conscious way where you're choosing to feel that. What happens, the burden of that feeling will slowly start to loosen up. It will slowly and gradually lose its power. That's what will happen. So mindfulness is not about not feeling any bad feelings from the present or from the past. Any other questions, Manas, that you would like?
Yeah, that is perfectly fine. Yeah.
Okay, good. So we were talking about acceptance, and we can practice acceptance in different aspects. We can practice acceptance towards our circumstances, like the one that the whole world is going through right now, through a crisis. We can practice also acceptance towards people that you find difficult in your life. You can practice acceptance towards your appearances, towards your own emotions, thoughts, and many more things. So again, here, if you see, you can practice acceptance towards your emotions. So I will connect it to what Umakant asked again. Any bad feelings, if you practice acceptance towards those, and I won't call them bad feelings, I will call them difficult feelings. Happiness is probably a more easier feeling to feel compared to, let's say, anxiousness or sadness. It's a more difficult feeling because that experience is hard to go through. But if we accept it, if we give ourselves that permission to feel those emotions, it will become easier. Now, next point is acceptance is an active process. It must be practiced. So if you look at the word accept, it's a verb, and that's why it's an active process. Again, when in the early years of my journey on well-being and personal growth, I made this mistake again and again, and I saw a lot of people on this journey making this mistake. They have this expectation that, oh, if they work on themselves and they learn to practice acceptance, one day it will be like suddenly they can just accept everything, whatever happens, and they can just move on to the next thing. But it doesn't happen like that. It's a process. So you may have to accept those things every now and then, probably even every day. Another thing is acceptance is. Hello, can you hear me, Manas?
Yeah. Please, go ahead.
Oh, 1 second. I think my video is off for a while, but anyways, I will talk if you can hear me. So I was talking about acceptance on a spectrum. Acceptance is not, again, a zero-sum game. It's not. What will happen is when you start practicing acceptance, you'll be on a spectrum of, you'll oscillate between resistance to acceptance. So you will notice yourself that for certain things, for certain times, in certain cases, you are resisting it, and at other times you're able to accept that. And that's okay. That's how this journey is. You will never be 100% at acceptance, but you will move closer to acceptance with committing to that practice again and again, committing to that process that we shared in the previous slide and trying to practice it. Also, accepting anything does not mean liking it, wanting it, choosing it, or justifying it, or supporting it. It just means that it is something which is not in your control, and so you are accepting that it is not in your control, and then you are looking at what is it that you can do about it. Acceptance also a lot of times is misunderstood as indifference or misunderstood as passivity. People think, oh, if you accept something, you cannot change it, but that's not correct. Acceptance is, once you accept what you cannot change, you can look at other things that you can change in that moment, and you can work towards changing those things.
Just a second, Pallavi. I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
One from Rashmi. Rashmi says that would avoiding be a part of acceptance or denial?
Avoiding will be avoiding. It's like we are distracting ourselves from the issue. So it will fall more in the category of denial, but it's not active denial. It's like I'm not looking at that issue. So I'll give a very simple example, very crude physical example. It's like if I break my arm, if I'm in acceptance, I will say, oh, I hurt myself, it's hurting a lot, I can't move it, I'm in a lot of pain, and yes, I need to go see a doctor. That's a simple example. But if I am avoiding it, I will say, if I break my hand, and it's hurting, I'm in a lot of pain, I will say, oh, let me watch this movie. Will that work? Not really. Denial will be, I look at that broken hand and I say, nothing is broken, it's fine. So if you compare that with a physical example, you see how clearly there's a difference between acceptance, denial, and avoidance. So I hope that answers your question, Rashmi.
Yeah. Another question I have from Diksha Grover Chilana, and question is, how can I deal with the people whom I don't like but have to interact on a daily basis? So if you want to respond to it, you can respond. Otherwise, we can hold it later on.
Yeah, I will just very quickly give, there is a brief response to that question, Diksha, and there's a long response. So given the time limitation, I'll just quickly give you a very brief response. It's being able to deal with people who are difficult, but you have to deal with them, is one of the biggest challenges in your own journey of personal growth. It will involve applying these topics that I talked about. It will involve applying, particularly being mindful and acceptance. What are the parts of those people that trigger you? So become mindful. What is those? What is it? What do you think about them? What is it about their behavior that you don't like? Get aware about that, and it's okay for you to feel that way. And next, here the acceptance is for you to know: can you really change those people? Probably not. Can you change, like, can you get away from them? If I think my thing is that if you could change, you would not be asking the question. So it seems that you can't really get away, at least for this for some time. You need to be interacting with those people. Understanding that and accepting that, taking some time to process that, giving yourself that space of letting it sink in, and allowing yourself to feel whatever those people make you feel, whether it's being angry or upset or anxious, whatever that is. Give yourself some space to feel that, and then you will slowly move from there to that last step of assessing and responding, and you will find your own unique solution in ways in which you can deal with those people, and it will be very, very unique to you. I cannot give a standard response for you to those people. So yeah, so that's the brief answer. Right, should we move on to the next?
Please,
Yes.
please.
So I want all of you, this is a question that I have, and you can, I want all of you to take a moment and reflect. What do you need to accept? Is there anything that you need to accept in life at this moment? And if you like, please share your responses in the chat window. Is there anything that you need to accept? And if you feel okay to share, please share. And if you feel that is a bit personal, it's okay for you to not share, and we can just move on. So and Manas, you can read.
Yeah, Shrikant says that the life as it comes, you need to accept.
Especially,
Whatever
I
you
think,
cannot change. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just responding to what he said. The life as it comes. I think it's something which is very, very important in this given time. And I can also see there are some more responses coming.
Yeah.
Where people are saying,
Rajniti says Rajniti says, whatever we cannot change.
Hmm. Right.
Sarvari Ghosh says, the situation we are in. Rashmi says,
Yes.
financial and emotional loss.
Yes. Yes. There will
Gladys
be
says, I
some.
accept that there are things that is beyond my control.
Right.
Ram Kumar from Kuwait, he says that I believe that living the now moment, accept, adore, admire, and anticipate.
Hmm.
Dr. Anjana says that life will be different now.
Yes, yes. So correct. And I think we have some very, very interesting responses here. And I would just want to thank all those who have shared these things. And as you have shared and as you have just reflected and even, said it out loud to yourself or typed it here, I would like to say that that in itself is step one, towards this process of acceptance. And with that,
A
we will
personal
move.
experience. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Yes,
Go
yes,
ahead. Please
please.
go ahead.
No, no, please. You
No,
wanted to share. Yes.
no, not me, but I know there was some personal, a private message by somebody. I'll not take the name,
Mm-hmm.
but he said that the my child is suffering from autism, and I accept it.
Mm.
So it's an acceptance, whatever is given to you. So
Yes,
that is what
yes, yes,
kind
and
of
I would like to add to that that it may be very hard to accept that, but in that process of acceptance, there will be a lot of learnings and growth for the parent who's working towards accepting that. And with that, let's move on. Should we move on to the next uh,
yeah.
topic? So the next is resilience. What is resilience? It is right now in this COVID-19 crisis and everything that is going on. Resilience is very, very relevant. Resilience is basically the ability that gets you through any crisis, through any adversity. And American Psychological Association defines resilience as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress like relationship issues, serious health problems, or financial stresses. So, if you look at resilience, it's basically again the process of adapting well in the face of any crisis, any adversity. Now, this crisis or the adversity could be global, again, like the one that we are facing right now, the COVID-19, which is affecting a lot of people across the world. Or it could also, the crisis could also be a personal crisis that you are facing at an individual level. Irrespective of the nature of that crisis or the adversity, resilience is the ability that helps you get through it. Resilience, the ability can lead you to adapt to different life changing situations. It helps you bounce back to pre crisis status quickly, and it also helps you in growing in from that difficult time, basically emerging stronger than before. And if we look at this there if we look at history, if we look at people around us, there are some amazing examples of resilience around us. And Manas and I were discussing earlier, right, Manas? Would you like to share about Viktor Frankl?
Yeah, sure. This was a book called Man's Search for Meaning. In fact, I have kept that book in case the discussion comes in. I'll show
Yes.
it to you.
Yeah.
Viktor Frankl was Austrian psychologist, and this
Mm.
was during this World War II time, and this person was actually put into the concentration, and the difficult days, and he was describing in this book called Man's Search for Meaning, that what is it that people, and wonderful study about how some of these people could survive the difficult situation of the concentration camps, and he has actually gone through in details about the psychology part of it. And the one very important thing that he has observed out there is, he said that people could survive if there is something significant to achieve in life. There is this drive is making them through something, our personal aspiration or the vision that that
Right.
person is having to achieve in life. So that overcomes that person.
Totally agree. I mean, Viktor Frankl, he wrote this book, like Mana shared, Man's Search for Meaning. He he arrived in those camps, concentration camps, and he survived through those camps for 3 years. On in his initial days, he arrived, he managed to hide his manuscript of the book that he
Yeah.
was writing at that time, and it was taken away from him. And he says that what there were two things that really helped him survive those difficult times. He said that one was his desire to see his wife, that gave meaning and purpose to him to go through all that suffering. And the second was to be able to get out alive of these concentration camps and write that book again. And he says that that purpose was drove him so strongly in those 3 years that he would imagine writing him that manuscript in his head again and again. So that's how he found meaning in those difficult times, and that gave him that resilience, that gave him that strength to survive through that and thrive through that. And eh, that's why if you look at resilience, the next thing that I wanted to talk about resilience were the different components that help us be more resilient. And one of the very important component is meaning and purpose. If you have meaning and purpose in your life, a bigger purpose or something that drives you, it helps you, it gives you the strength to go through the difficult phases, to go through those difficult times. It doesn't mean that it won't cause you pain, but what it means is it will give you the strength to bear through that pain. And that's exactly what Viktor Frankl did, and that's exactly what many people do around us. Resilience is also an ability that is very natural in all human beings. It only depends how how often are we actually using it, how much are we accessing it, how much are we practicing it to get more uh, to get more used to of using that ability of ours. There are a few other things that help us to be resilient, and one is connection, our connection with ourselves. How connected are we with our own self, and how is our connection with the people around us, the people who are close to us. So if research suggests that if you have connection with people, strong connections with yourself and people around you, it will help you to be more resilient. It will help you to get through a difficult phase of your life more easily. uh, Thinking is another very important component of resilience. How healthy is your thinking? How do you respond to, in terms of your thoughts, to what's happening? And the next component is wellness. So it includes the wellness of mind and body, and like I already talked about mindfulness, that helps you to implement the wellness of mind and body. We'll talk more about over the next few slides, where you need to take care of your body, so that you have the wellness of the mind as well as the body. As you take look at these four components, you will be able to build more resilience in life. Resilience, however, is a very, very wide subject, and we that's why we have separate training on this subject, where we help you identify things that you can do, practices that you can develop, which are more applicable to you personally, so that you can push your resilience, boost your resilience. One exercise that we would want to share here with you, that we would want you to take back and practice, is writing a letter. Writing a letter to yourself. So, particularly again in context of COVID-19, if we look at, I want you to write a letter from, not right now, but later on, as we wrap up the webinar today, tomorrow, sometime, find some time and write a letter from a part of you which is feeling overwhelmed or feeling anxious or feeling worried about the current situation, and let that part pour its heart out on that letter. Don't censor it. Let it come out as whatever that part of you is feeling, thinking, experiencing, and read that letter. Don't jump on to giving solutions to the letter. Read that letter. Let that letter be there for a day or two. Again, feeding back into taking that space to letting it sink in. Take a day or 2 or 3, and then sit down to write a reply to that letter and see what comes out. It is a very, very effective tool. Again, something that I use personally for myself very often, and I have seen many of my clients benefiting from this letter writing exercise. And also research studies have confirmed the effectiveness of these exercises, these writing exercises. Research says that expressive writing, it boosts resilience, it promotes meaning making, and it decreases emotional reactivity. So I would really insist you to do this exercise at home, maybe once a week at least, and see what happens, see what comes. Let's move on to the next poll question. Before we go on to the question, Manas, is there any persisting question that you would want me to answer?
Not so far, but there was one question by Umakant, and this was little, he's asking that how to bring mind into silence, peaceful state. So it's about that, meditation and all that thing. How to bring in, bring into that silence. Keep mind.
Perfect. So let's come back to that question in our Q&A session.
Okay.
Just remind me, and I will answer that.
Okay. There is another. Yeah. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's should we move on to the poll question number 5?
There was another question by Zinat Zahoor. It is, if a person don't have any meaning and purpose in a particular situation, so how he can develop resilience. So it is on the resilience part, the 4 things that you have mentioned on the previous slide. She's asking that if a person doesn't have any meaning and purpose in a particular situation, so how he can develop resilience.
So one thing is to know that, whatever that you're going through, the situation, it is impermanent. Nothing is permanent in life. So just that understanding and knowing that the suffering or the difficult time is at the end of it temporary. It will pass, just like the good times pass. This difficult time will also pass. And another thing is to find that meaning or purpose. And it doesn't, sometimes these sound like very big words, but what I want to say is that they are not really. It doesn't have to be something larger than life necessarily. Like, again, giving Viktor Frankl's example, for him one of the biggest thing that gave purpose was to want to see his wife. So you find your meaning and your purpose. And one very simple example is, for you, for anybody, even a purpose could be that I want to get up every day and just get through life with enthusiasm. That in itself could be a wonderful purpose, and that can drive you. So, and again, that's what we emphasize a lot more in our resilience training, to help you discover your own purpose. And it's a question that you can answer, that what is the purpose that you would want to take up. And again, for some people it may be some big things, but it doesn't necessarily have to. Whatever gives meaning to you. For a lot of people, their children give meaning to them. For a lot of people, their work give meaning to them. There are many people for whom just small things, just looking at nature, gives meaning to them. So it's just, you have to ask those questions to yourself and find. That is one. And the second thing is knowing the impermanent nature of any difficult situation and crisis, and then finding out what can you do in those situations. What is it which is in your control? So asking some hard questions to your own self and trying to figure out answers to those questions will help you access that resilience more and more. That is one. And second is, do that exercise, Zenith. do that exercise of writing that letter from that part of you which has asked this question, and let that part of you emphasize on that question, and then write a reply, and you will get your answer. Okay, so let's move to poll question 5, Manas.
Yeah, we'll move there. So the question is there something new that you are grateful for because of the lockdown? We have put that question on, and please respond to the question.
Yes. Is there something new that you're grateful for because of the lockdown? Do you have something that you didn't have before the lockdown? It has come up because of this new situation that has happened.
Wow. In fact, we are getting 100% saying yes.
Wow.
No, now it is 95.
Yeah, I can see it's exciting to see how people are responding and you know, amazing. So what I'm seeing so far, Manas, is that 95% of the people are saying yes, that they have something new that they are grateful for because of the lockdown. Now it's 96%. Wow. I definitely have. So if you have, it would really be nice if you can share that. If you can type in the chat window, what is it that you're grateful for in this time because of the lockdown? So if you can share that in chat, and Manas can read that. And while people are sharing, I will share what I am grateful for. I'm here in USA, in Boston, and here the it's following social distancing, but we have the freedom to get in the nature. So I feel grateful that while I'm away from home, while I'm not able to get home at this time, but at least I have access to nature. I can go out to a beach, I can go out to a park, and I can give myself that time and space in nature to help myself calm down, to do some exercise, and I'm truly grateful for that.
We are getting some responses. Sanjay Giri, he's saying
Mm-hmm.
new definition of life. This is what a kind of be grateful for. Kanchan Thakur says new meaning to all the existing relations.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's getting a new meaning. Rohit says I had a son born to us 4 weeks back, and I can
Mm-hmm.
spend time taking care of him and being
Yes,
able to support my.
amazing. Wonderful. So we've
Umakant,
got
my
some very
son.
interesting, responses. Like I can also see Shrikant is
Yeah,
saying
please.
that there's a lot of time, personal space, and quality time with family. So there are lots of things that we have suddenly been gifted with in this difficult time. So, are we taking out time? That's what we are going to talk about. We need to take out time to count these blessings and to give ourselves again the space to feel grateful for these things. So again, there are a lot of research done on gratitude and how it affects our brain. And to sum it up, gratitude is something that makes us more happy, that makes us feel more blissed. It also reduces anxiety and fear, and it also evokes positive thinking. So gratitude is good for us in many ways. One thing that I want to point out here is that a lot of people are talking about gratitude, and so what happens, we get into this, oh, I need to do it, without again feeling it. We get into the part of doing it in terms of action without experiencing it. So I say counting your blessings or feeling grateful is very important. uh, in terms of experiencing it, in terms of allowing yourself to feel it from within, and not just saying it because you think, oh, it will help you. And to work towards that, we have another exercise for you. Like many of you have shared all these wonderful things, and I'm seeing some of the responses are still coming, and they're just wonderful. uh, you know I want you to write down, make a list of all the things that you are grateful right now, that you have right now because of this current situation. And you have to, the idea is to make this list as long as possible. So you should begin with at least 10 items in this list. And you can add on one more item every day if you can. Once you've written the list, spend 15 minutes every day just looking at that list. Spending 15 minutes just looking at the list, saying nothing, doing nothing, just looking at that list. And after that 15 minutes, just notice how you're feeling, what you're experiencing. And that is gratitude. And that can drive you to say thank you. That will come after feeling and experiencing it from within. So Manas, I see some very interesting question. Somebody saying how to be grateful without feeling guilt. So we'll just take that up in the Q&A section. That's an interesting question. So I just want to say to Ishani, we'll get back to you in the Q&A section. Let's move on to physical well-being. So while we talked a lot about mental health and emotional well-being, but we also need to pay attention to our physical well-being, because stress is just as much physical as it is emotional. So you need to look at your nutrition. If you're making a lot of meals at home while you don't have other things to do, make sure that you're not just overindulging yourself, and keeping in balance a nutritional diet. Make sure that you are getting enough sleep. And especially in this time of lockdown where your movement is restricted, can you find some time to do exercise every day? Because all these things will help you maintain a healthy physical body, and that will help you to maintain a healthy mental and emotional state. And I'm going to quickly summarize what we have discussed so far. We talked about response, being mindful, acceptance, resilience, counting your blessings, and physical well-being. And as you practice these, each of these aspects, they feed into each other. And as you practice them, you will move to a state of enhanced mental health and well-being, and you will emerge stronger than before at the end of this crisis, at the other side of this crisis. And I'll quickly, repeat the tools that we have discussed. We have talked about steps to practice mindfulness, and we have talked about the steps and process of practicing acceptance. There are 2 exercises that we discussed: writing a letter to self and counting your blessings. Important thing to know is that this does not mean that your current problems will go away immediately. It means that you will develop the ability to see past them, better handle stress, and return to a state of well-being. It also doesn't mean that you will stop experiencing, difficult emotions like fear, anger, grief, pain, or sadness, or you will need to be emotionless or stay. What it means is that you will be able to process them and function well physically as well as psychologically. It also doesn't mean that suddenly, because you've got this knowledge, from tomorrow you will develop these abilities. No, but you will build the mental muscle gradually by putting effort consistently again and again and practicing it. So what matters most? And at the cost of sounding repetitive, I'm going to say this again, but it is very important that apply these discussed tools and concepts in real life situation. Practice them. That is what is going to bring change. Use the exercises at least, twice a week. Join our, if you are interested in learning more about any of these, more about these practices, join our trainings on resilience, self-compassion, acceptance, and Manas can tell you more about more of our upcoming trainings. Take one-to-one well-being sessions if there is something in particular that you want to work on that will push your personal growth to the next level. And very quickly, I want to share this concept. It's called post-traumatic growth. It's like a opposite of PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. This talks about post-traumatic growth. So there's growing body of research that suggests that we humans have the ability to not only bounce back from a trauma or a crisis, but to actually yield a positive life on the other side of a traumatic experience. And that's what they term it as post-traumatic growth. So these researchers have found that people who go through trauma or difficult experiences in life, they find at the end of it, they find more appreciation for life. They develop better relationships with themselves and the people who are close to them. They see new possibilities in life, and they find personal strength and meaning which they didn't find earlier. So post-traumatic growth, look for what can you grow from during this crisis. And I would want to share this wonderful quote by Chris Peterson, who is the co-founder of Positive Psychology. He said, "Thriving people are good at struggling well." And see, he doesn't say thriving people are good at avoiding the struggles. Struggles are a part of our life, and we all have to face it in some way or the other. But when we really struggle well, we don't just survive, we thrive. So let us all aim to do that same thing. Let us all aim to not just survive this challenging time, but thrive it. And with that, we come to the end of the webinar, and we can take a few questions, Manas. Do you think we have some time?
Yeah, you actually had a couple of questions which you wanted to discuss.
Yes.
One from Umakant. Umakant actually talked about how to bring in peace, or just one second, how to bring mind into silence, peaceful state. That was one question. And the other question was, Ishani, you talked about that we'll discuss is how to be grateful without feeling guilt. This was same question coming from Sarmishta as well.
How to be grateful without feeling guilt. Okay, so I think I would begin with I would begin with answering the other question. But what they need to look at is, what is the guilt about? Is the guilt about feeling grateful, or is it about coming from something else? So while if they respond to it, good, and then I can answer that question better. So let's give them some time on that, and I will answer Umakant's question, which was how to. Can you repeat that question?
How to get in? Yeah, I'll just repeat it.
Yes.
The question was how to bring mind into silence, peaceful state.
Yes. So that's a very interesting question, and I would say it's also a very difficult question. It's not that there's no button, there's no switch that you can turn on or off and put your mind into silent state or chatter free state. In fact, just to give you an idea, an average person has about 50 to 70,000 thoughts every day. So that is the kind of noise that is there in our mind. And if you want to get towards a peaceful state, the approach is not to silence those thoughts, but the approach is, the step one is again going to being mindful that there are a lot of thoughts, and going back to accepting that it's okay in this moment where I am in this phase of my life, in this state, there are a lot of thoughts. That when you give yourself that permission to accept that, to say that it is okay, there are too many thoughts, that in itself actually leads you closer towards peace. And as you do that again and again and again, you will notice one of the two things happening. Either these thoughts will go relatively down, or they will not bother you as much. They can just exist there, but they don't have to interfere with your peace. And coming back to the question about how to feel grateful without guilt, I don't fully, I think, understand the question. Have they?
I'll just say, yeah, the respondent Sarmishta says it's the guilt about having so much while many suffer. So this
Yes.
is one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
can visualize. Yeah.
The guilt, it's again getting aware that the guilt is not helping you. If you have so much and you see many others suffer, do what you can to help others in whatever way. It doesn't mean that you have to give away everything that you have and only then you can have peace. You're lucky to have all the things that you have, but you are also lucky because you have all those things. You're also lucky you are in a position to probably offer help to somebody. And it doesn't again have to, that help doesn't again have to be at a very big scale. Like an example of it will be, and I'm sure many of the people have done this, that they have offered salaries to their domestic helps in this lockdown and given them full off. That in itself is a step one. You have at least helped that one family, and you need to answer what is it that you can give in these times to people who are suffering. And don't get worried about, oh, you only need to do it at a big scale. Even making a difference to one person's life is huge. So you can start there, and you can start with knowing that you are in a position, you should be grateful that you are in a position that you can help other people.
Wonderful. And there are a lot many praises coming from Sarmishta. Sarmishta says that this session is going to help in life. Thank you for an excellent session. Sarbari Ghosh says, wonderful session. A lot of positive thoughts in this challenging time. Thank you very much. Anuj Arya says, great stuff, really. Sanjoy says, thanks. Yash Sarmash says, thanks. Surinder says, wonderful session. So it's, and really a wonderful session, Pallavi, that you have.
Thank you. I'm so glad to have such an amazing audience on like I was a little apprehensive about the platform to be not able to see the participants, but I'm very happy that they were so interactive and they shared so openly. So
Asha says thank you so much. Shrikant says thanks, Pallavi and Manas. And Umakant also says very enlightening session. So everybody, Neha says wonderful session. Swarup says excellent session. So kudos to Pallavi ma'am. Great. Pallavi, thank you so much. At the end, if you have something to say, Pallavi, I'll also otherwise get to the offers part.
Yes, just get on to it. I just want to thank everyone who's joined us and helped in sharing their experiences.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody joining us. And Dr. Anjana also loved the session, Pallavi. She has said, we need blessings from our seniors. Great going, Manas. Thank you so much, Dr. Anjana. For the participants, we'd like to just mention that we have some offers for you, and this is you can register for the counseling sessions, or if you know somebody who need help, please guide those persons to register with us for counseling sessions. We have experts with us who can help you, or the persons who is going through some stages. We can help these people to come over these situations. So this is about the initiative that we have picked up, Value Vendor Aapke Saath. Register with us for counseling session. You can also have online distress test report, which we have come up with. And thank you so much. Please visit our our website, valueendow.com, and also participate in our future training programs and workshops and webinars. We'll love to have you with us in our future events. Thank you so much. With that, we'll end this webinar. And Pallavi, you want to say something?
Yeah. Just want to say, if you have any more questions, Manas has already shared the email ID. So just reach out to us and we'll be happy to, answer those. Just that. Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.